Ladies and gentlemen, this Red Gaming Tedacom video, we're going through my initial impressions of Call of Duty Advanced Warfare's multiplayer element. Now I suspect this is the reason that the majority of you are going to be buying the damn game in the first place. So starting things out, we're going to be looking at the game's loadout and class customization options, and things are very familiar. You have 13 points to spend on weapons, attachment, perks, and other pieces of gear to help you in your fragging quest. Leveling up and unlocking is paced well. Shoot someone in the knee, 1, 2, unlock more weapons and gear, 3, 4, use them to murder more foes, 5, 6, rinse and repeat, 7, 8. It's not really groundbreaking, but it works quite well, and unlocking is paced at a pretty decent speed. So far the weapons are pretty balanced, and the advanced weapons do add a bit more interest to the title, and by advanced I mean the lasers and other non-standard traditional weapons that you'd expect to see in every Call of Duty. Personally, I'm more a fan of these traditional weapons thus far, but that's just me. As hinted earlier, some attachments can be added to the weapons, various scopes such as say a simple red dot, all the way to targeting enhancements, suppressors, and a bunch of other cool additions which can help adjust the weapons to your own liking. You've also got various options such as shields to absorb damage, tactical grenades which can highlight all enemies in the area, stun grenades, cloaks, stim to raise your maximum health, and a bunch of other stuff. They're all present. Carefully using them in the right situation is of course vital, because some of them do have a small startup delay. So in other words, if you're trying to activate them in combat, you're probably going to die. Therefore some foresight is definitely a good idea. As you've likely heard by now, movement in the game is aided by the inclusion of the exosuit. You can use it to double jump, perform quick dashes to either side, and even change your trajectory in the air, or even perform a ground slam which can kill the opponent. It does add a nice level of verticality to the title, but I would offer a single word of caution. Unless you add a particular perk, you'll become easy to spot in the minimap if you constantly just start dashing about. Thus, while movement is definitely a key, if you continue to do it like an absolute mad person, particularly without this perk, you're going to be very easy prey indeed, because everyone on the minimap is going to be aware of where you are. As you've likely, this does help fix two of the biggest issues I've personally had with Call of Duty. The first is the very newbie-friendly jump and prone tactic. Few employ it online in this particular title so far, so its effectiveness has been diminished. Now, we don't have half the players in the battlefield basically throwing themselves to the floor with each and every encounter, which frankly looked a bit ludicrous and was getting a bit silly. Secondly, it does add some spice to the title. I'm aware that not every Call of Duty player will like the changes. It's actually arguable Sledgehammer have managed to alienate some of their core audience from these changes, but personally I really like it. It helps to become a lot more mobile and gives you rise to a lot of extra additional tactics. Similar to other previous CODs, however, you do still die pretty damn fast. A few well-placed bullets will pretty much finish you off. While I'm aware that not everyone enjoys the whole I'm dead after a few bullets gameplay, I have to say that I'm really enjoying it. While I'm terrible at the game still, not helped by my frankly terrible ability to adapt to playing on a pad, I have primarily been focusing on the console versions thus far. I will be testing the PC out more this weekend, but at the moment I've been focused on the consoles because I'm trying to get like all the graphics stuff up. But I'm still having an absolute lot of fun indeedy. Maps are generally interesting. I've tried to add a few different ones in this video so you can kind of see a couple of them anyway. Maps are fairly interesting. You've got jungle like Aztec ruins, a prison that's not exactly as secure as it used to be since there's been a huge hole blown in the walls, a biolab, and so on and so on and so on. All of the maps feel interesting and fairly balanced. The additional vertical nature of the levels certainly helps build a lot more interest, and primarily the level designs feels pretty familiar in that, generally speaking, the maps have 1 to 2 key focal points. A word of caution, they're pretty much a death sentence to you if you head in unless you're pretty familiar with the map and know where basically the key points are that people are likely to enter through or hide in. In other words, understanding height advantage, learning common hiding places, and overall adapting to your new skill set is critical, or you're going to be shot in the back quite often. About halfway through the game, you'll actually find that the maps change a little. So you might have a part of the level which, for example, floods, or there might be poison gas which will creep over certain parts of the level. Now obviously flooding doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to die instantly, you'll maybe just have to swim out or whatever. Poison gas will pretty much kill you very quickly, however. So there's a variety of different dangers depending on the levels, and in some it's something to be mindful of. Well, it's an idea that's likely been borrowed from Battlefield. I feel it does fit the game perfectly, in my personal opinion anyway. Servers and matchmaking aren't too bad. There are a few issues. I would prefer to have actual numbers, in other words MS, rather than ping bars. And secondly, dedicated servers. Host advantage can be a bit of an issue at the moment, but dedicated servers are coming. Respawn when you die, and it's pretty smart. You do occasionally respawn in the middle of a bad situation, but it's frankly not too often, and thus the frustration is considerably lower than other titles that I could mention. There's certainly enough of the game modes to keep you entertained. You've got, of course, a traditional kill confirmed, regular deathmatch, capture the flag, and so on and so forth. Supposedly there will be a zombie mode incoming, but it's going to be, from what we hear, DLC, which is a bit of a shame. But I know not everyone likes zombies, but I also know that for many people they love zombies. A bonus is that you have access to local split screen and can create your own servers for you and your buddy. This is really helpful if you want to learn maps or just practice basic tactics or weapons with friends. Obviously you're dealing with a much narrower field of view in this, however, because you're basically sharing the screen, and thus a larger screen display is definitely recommended. I wouldn't recommend doing it on, say, a 20-inch PC monitor. I would recommend like a good size screen, but it's still quite a lot of fun. You could actually take it online like this as well, which is quite a lot of fun indeed. Performance frame rate is pretty solid. The Xbox One version handles things extremely well, and the PS4 version definitely does perform better than the campaign. If you've been following my Facebook comments so far, I have been doing some frame rate testing on the PS4 and the Xbox One version, and so far the PS4 version is definitely handling worse in the campaign. The frame rate dips more because obviously it's running at a higher internal resolution, but fortunately the online multiplayer of the PS4 does handle much better than the campaign, so it's not too much of a big deal. If we boil the game down, however, to its very core, I do find myself enjoying the gameplay. The last COD I really enjoyed was, say, Call of Duty 4 on the PC. If you've never been a fan of Call of Duty, the way the gunplay works, all the basic mechanics, and you're probably not going to be convinced with this latest iteration. It still feels like COD, but it's actually a good Call of Duty. Would I suggest you purchase this game? If you're an FPS fan, particularly a Call of Duty fan or its ilk, then yes, it's a great purchase and should keep you entertained for some time. The Xbox One does have Halo coming out soon, however, as you're probably aware, and so if you're planning to play primarily with friends and they're more Halo heads over COD fiends, that could be something for you to consider. But generally speaking, it's a great game. I'm sure some of the changes will upset die-hard COD fans, whom I'm frankly unable to speak for, as I was only average at the game back in Call of Duty 4 and haven't really enjoyed any COD since to get really good at it. But for others, it's definitely a breath of fresh air, and I would recommend the title. It's not without its faults, but it is worth picking up on any platform. So to sum it up, my personal opinions of the game are pretty positive. It's actually fairly strange, because this is a Call of Duty that definitely hopes to bring in new players rather than older ones. Necessarily, it will appeal, of course, to old school Call of Duty fans, but it still may alienate some of its old fan base. But personally speaking, I feel that some of the changes were for the best. I think it adds some fresh air to the Call of Duty franchise, and I think there are risks that were definitely worth taking. So I'm going to be finishing this video, and I'm going to be playing a little bit more, because honestly I need to do it for frame rate testing and stuff. Honest. No, seriously, I would think it's a pretty cool game, and I'd recommend you check it out. So, anyway, those are my initial impressions. Take care, bye for now.